आगे बैठे शेयर स्क्रीन कर दूं?
गुड मॉर्निंग सर।
गुड मॉर्निंग।
यस सर, अब स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं सर।
I don't know how many people have joined so far.
सर अभी तो 4 स्टूडेंट्स आए हैं सर।
हाँ वो तो 5 कर लूंगा ना, पर अभी थोड़ा सा मैं स्क्रीन कर लूंगा जो चाहिए मुझे। ये हो गया। गलत ये वाला चीज यहाँ से लिखता हूँ। F5
Same.
the slide show escape. Thank you.
थाली लिया तो सब्जी डाल।
Hello, good morning.
गुड मॉर्निंग सर।
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. So can we start?
सर अभी 19 स्टूडेंट आए हैं बस सर। बस सर 2 मिनट वेट कर लेते हैं, मैंने मैसेज ड्रॉप कर दिया है सर ग्रुप में।
ठीक है।
ओके सर।
थैंक यू। ओके।
सर 27 स्टूडेंट्स आ गए हैं सर, अब हम स्टार्ट कर सकते
ठीक,
हैं।
now we can
केवल
start.
जुड़
We
गए
can
हैं।
start.
जी सर,
Hello everybody, good morning.
गुड मॉर्निंग सर।
So, thank you, good morning. So, last time I started with field extensions. So within 2-3 minutes, I will just recapitulate what we had been doing last time. So first of all, we defined what is meant by extension of a field. Let us recall that if f and k are two fields, then we say k is an extension of f provided f is a subfield of k. Now this k can be treated as a vector space over f. As a vector space, k can be finite dimensional or it can be infinite dimensional. In case k is a finite dimensional vector space, we say k is a finite extension of f. And with a square, we write k colon f to show that it is finite dimension, but when we take them in the form of field, it is called degree of k over f. So degree of k over f basically is the dimension of k over f. And after that, we defined algebraic element. That is, if k is an extension of f, then we say k is an element u in k is algebraic over f, provided u satisfies some non-zero polynomial over f. Now remember, each element of f is algebraic over f, because if alpha belongs to f, then x minus alpha can be thought of as a polynomial which is satisfied by alpha. So each element of f becomes algebraic over f. So this concept becomes meaningful when we consider the extension of f, because in that case, it is not necessary that each element of k should be algebraic over f. Examples are e pi. Okay. So over the field of rational numbers. And then we have proved results that an element u in k is algebraic over f, provided if I adjoin u to f, it is of finite dimension or it is of finite degree. That is, f of u over f is finite. And then if each element of extension is algebraic over f, then we say that the extension is an algebraic extension of f. Now, if we consider the field of rational numbers, obviously R is an extension of Q, then all those elements of R which are not algebraic over Q, they are called transcendental numbers. They are called transcendental numbers. Now, then we consider the concept of minimal polynomial. That is, if u in k is algebraic over f, then it may satisfy many polynomials over f. Then we consider out of these polynomial of the smallest degree, which is satisfied by this u. This polynomial is called the minimal polynomial. And we, without any loss of generality, we can take this as monic polynomial. That is, the coefficient of the highest power of this polynomial is taken to be 1. And then we further developed theory in the sense that if px is any polynomial, It may be reducible, it may be irreducible. So let us take, say, irreducible polynomial. Then suppose it is defined over f. Then we can always find an extension E of f in which this particular polynomial is always going to have a root. And this extension is always a finite extension. So by repeated application of this result, we can always find, if suppose Px is of degree n, then we can always find an extension E of f such that degree of E over f is going to be less than or equal to factorial n. This is the upper limit. Is going to be less than or equal to factorial n, in which this particular polynomial Px has all the roots. And it has given to rise the concept of splitting field. In case of splitting field, we say if fx is any polynomial over f, a field E is a splitting field of this fx, provided E contains all the roots of fx, and that is fx can be written as a product of factors over E, and degree of E over f is finite. That is, it is a finite extension in which fx has all the roots of fx has got all the roots. This is known as full complement of roots. That is, full complements of roots of fx lie in f. And then we saw that under what conditions a polynomial can have multiple roots. And the result was very trivial, that if fx and the derivative of fx have a non-trivial common factor, then this fx is going to have repeated roots. Otherwise, fx is going to have all the n distinct roots. Now, once we know that there exist situations where a polynomial has got all the distinct roots, so it has given rise to another concept, that is the separable extension. Last time we had been, I defined this. So let me just repeat that. So if f is any field and fx is any polynomial of degree n, then we say that fx is separable if it has n distinct roots in any splitting field That is, if fx has got all the distinct roots in its splitting field, then we say that this polynomial fx is separable. And an element u in K is said to be separable, provided u is algebraic over f and its minimal polynomial is separable. That is, it has got all distinct roots. So after that, we define what is known as the separable extension. And obviously, an extension K of a field F will be called separable, provided each element of K is separable over F. Using this concept, now let me prove a very trivial result. That is, if F is any field and Fx is a non-constant polynomial over F, then if Fx and f dash are relatively prime in fx, then fx is separable over f. Now we say two polynomials fx and gx to be relatively prime if their greatest common divisor is 1. And one of the important properties of relatively prime concept is that if fx and gx are two relatively prime polynomials, then we can always find two polynomials, tx and sx, such that fx into tx plus gx into sx is equal to 1. We shall use this fact. And let us see the proof of this lemma. So we shall prove this lemma by the contrapositive argument. Suppose fx is not separable. Suppose fx is not separable, it means it has got multiple roots. So we will show that fx and f dash x are not. We will show that fx and f dash x are not relatively prime. So let K be the splitting field of fx. And suppose fx is not separable, then fx must have a repeated root, say u in K. Further, let us suppose, for the sake of simplicity only, otherwise you can always take multiple roots. Suppose u repeats 2 times. That is x minus u square is a factor. So I can just write fx as x minus u squared times gx for some gx in kx. Now if I just differentiate it, you will see f dash x is nothing but x minus u squared into g dash x plus twice of x minus u times gx. Now this yields that f dash of u equal to 0. That is x minus u is a common factor of fx and f dash x. So fx has got repeated roots. Okay. So if fx this is the minimal polynomial of u, it means px divides fx and px also divides f dash x. It simply means that px is a non-constant factor of both fx and f dash x. That is, fx and f dash x are not relatively prime. And this proves the lemma. So we shall use this lemma in the following theorem. We have already seen that any finite extension is always a simple extension. That is an extension which is obtained by adjoining a single element to the given field. So we have got a similar theorem for separable extensions also. That it says let K be a finitely generated separable extension. Finitely generated means it is generated by finitely many elements. Let K be a finitely generated separable extension of F. Then this K can be realized as or can be thought of as a simple extension. That is, you can always find an element u in K such that K is nothing but f of u. So the proof of this, important also, goes like this. So we are given that K is finitely generated separable extension. So we can always find finite number of elements u1, u2, un in K such that this K is nothing but obtained by adjoining u1, u2, un to F. That is K is equal to F of u1, u2, un. So we prove the theorem by induction on n. Now if n is equal to 1, then K is equal to F of u1 and we are done, nothing to be done. So let us assume that the theorem be true, say for n is equal to 2 also, because then we can extend this. Again, for the sake of simplicity, we are going to prove it for n is equal to 2 also. And in this case, we are going to assume that field F, it is always of characteristic 0, because this gives us a liberty to have infinitely many elements. So next we show the result for n is equal to 2. So let us assume that suppose K is equal to F of BW. So we will try to find some element U or C such that K is equal to Fc. So we show that K is a simple extension of F. Assume first that the characteristic of F is 0. And so F contains infinitely many elements. So let Px in Fx be the minimal polynomial of V and Qx be the minimal polynomial of W. It is not necessary that the same polynomial should be minimal polynomial for both U, V and W. So for V, it is Qx, and for W, it is Px. Sorry, for for V it is Px, and for W it is Qx. Okay. Now because V and W, they are separable elements. So these polynomials, Px and Qx, they have all distinct roots. So let W is equal to W1, W2, Wn be the roots of Qx, and V is equal to V1, V2, Vm be the roots of Px in N, where L is the splitting field of both Px and Qx. And we are assuming, because once we are taking L to be splitting field for Px and Qx, so we have to take a common polynomial. Let us consider the common polynomial to be Px into Qx. Product of two polynomials is again a polynomial. So we can talk of splitting field of this particular polynomial Px dot Qx. So let L be the splitting field of, yeah, let L be the splitting field of Px into Qx. And then we have taken Qx and Px both belongs to L. So let these be the roots of Qx in L, and V is equal to V1, V2, Vm be the roots of Px in L. Okay, they are all distinct roots. Now, because as I assumed that F is of characteristic 0, so it has got infinitely many elements, I can always find an element C in F such that C is different from Vi minus V upon W minus Wj. Remember, V is equal to V1 and W is equal to W1. So J can vary from 2 to N only, because if I put J is equal to 1, denominator will be 0, which is not admissible. So I can always find an element C in F such that C is different from Vi minus V upon W minus Wj, where I varies from 1 to M and J varies from 2 to N. Now here I take an element, say U is equal to V plus CW. We claim that this U is going to serve our purpose. That is, we shall show that this K is nothing but F of U. So for this we show that this W belongs to F of U. So for this we define another polynomial, say Hx is equal to P of U minus Cx. And this particular polynomial, this belongs to Fu over X, because we have already adjoined U to F, so Fu of X. So it is a polynomial over Fu. Now it is obvious that W is the root of Hx, because H of W is nothing but P of U minus Cw, and P U minus Cw is V, and V is the root of Px. Therefore, this is equal to 0. So W is the root of Hx. Now, can there be any other root of Px of Hx? Answer is no, because suppose Wj for j different from 1 is also a root of Hx. Then H of Wj will be nothing but P of U minus Wc times Wj. And we have assumed that Wj is a root of Hx. Therefore, H of Wj should be equal to 0. So this implies P of U minus Cwj equal to 0. That is, U minus Cwj is a root of Px. So it and Px has got all the distinct roots. So it means U minus Cwj is one of the roots of Px. Let's see U minus Cwj be equal to Vi for some I. So this implies U is equal to V plus Cw, but U is nothing but since U is equal to V plus Cw, so I equate both sides. V plus CW is equal to CWJ plus VI. That is V plus CW minus CWJ is equal to VI. And from here we conclude that C is equal to VI minus W upon W minus WJ. And it is a contradiction because C is not equal to this. So this contradiction shows that except W, no other root of Px can be root of Hx. So therefore, W is the only common root of Qx and Hx. Now, let Rx be the minimal polynomial of W over Fu. Then Rx divides Qx, so that every root of Rx is also a root of Qx. But Rx also divides Hx. It means every root of Rx is also root of Hx. Thus, Rx has a single root W in L. Therefore, Rx belongs to Fu of x must be of degree 1. And hence its root W is in Fu. So since V is equal to U minus W, CW, W belongs to this. It means, and UV belongs to Fu. We see that V also belongs to Fu. And hence, this K, which is nothing but FBW, is contained in F of U. But U is equal to V plus W, CW, which belongs to K. Therefore, F of U is also contained in K. And so this shows that this K is nothing but F of U. So this completes the proof for n is equal to 2. Now we just generalize this. Now let us assume that the theorem be true for say for n is equal to k minus 1. So what I will do, k is equal to, we know k is equal to f of u1 u2 uk, which can be written as f of u1 u2 uk minus 1, and I adjoin uk separately. And suppose f of u1 u2 uk, because by induction, so it is true for k is equal to n is equal to k minus 1. So I can always find an element t in k such that f of u1 u2 uk minus 1 is nothing but f of t. That is, this is equal to f of t of uk. That is f of t uk. And we have already proved the result for n is equal to 2. So we can always find an element u in k such that f of t uk is equal to fu. So k is nothing but fu. And this proves the theorem. So every separable extension or every extension which is generated by finitely many separated elements can be thought of as a simple extension. And we shall use this in our further studies. Now we come to our main topic, that is Dalva theorem. You already have heard about isomorphism. What are isomorphisms in case of rings? They are nothing but 1 onto homomorphisms. 1 onto homomorphism from one ring onto another ring. But if we consider the same ring or field, then this particular isomorphism is called automorphism. So we define the concept automorphism as, suppose K is any field, then and f phi is a function from K into K, which is a homomorphism. Then if phi is 1 as well as onto, then this phi is called an automorphism. Auto means same, from a field to itself, that is auto. And we say two automorphisms, phi 1 and phi 2, distinct, provided they differ at some elements. There exists some element alpha in K such that phi 1 of alpha is not equal to phi 2 of alpha. Now this concept of automorphism is going to play the central role in the development of Galois theory. Now remember, if I consider the collection of all automorphisms, it may not be a vector space. It may not form a vector space. So I cannot talk of linear independence or dependence of automorphisms. So, but we have got a theorem, like it is, in other words, you can just call this as linearly independent system. Let K be a field, and suppose sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma n are distinct automorphisms of K. Then it says it is impossible to find scalars, elements of K, alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n, not all of which are 0. Because if all of them are 0, then it means they will be, in terms of vector space, linearly independent. But he says it is not possible to find alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n, not all of which are 0 in K, such that for every u in K, alpha 1 sigma 1 u plus alpha 2 sigma 2 u plus alpha n sigma n u equal to 0. Okay, so you can just keep in mind that if you are given a finite collection of distinct automorphisms, they are always linearly independent.
ये करने हैं बोलो, ठीक है? ये घर का नहीं है, ना घर से करके लाने, बस घर का ही काम है, यहाँ कुछ नहीं करना. अरे तो
So we are going to prove this result. It's again an important result because it will be used in proving the Artin's theorem, which is keynote as far as Galois theory is concerned. So what we are going to do, again we shall prove this result by contrapositive argument. Suppose it is possible to find alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n in K, not of all which are 0. That is, some of them may be 0, other may be non-zero, such that alpha 1 sigma 1 u plus alpha 2 sigma 2 u plus alpha n sigma n u equal to 0 for all u in K. Okay, let me put this as expression 1. Now, as I told you, sum of alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n may be 0. So let me ignore which are 0. Okay, so ignoring all those alphas which are 0, so I have got a minimal expression from this, which I can relabel. So suppose the minimal expression is this one. Alpha 1, I have relabeled means, again I have put suffixes alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n, because the remaining they have been eliminated because they were 0. So suppose this is the minimal expression, alpha 1 sigma 1 u plus alpha 2 sigma 2 u plus alpha m sigma m equal to u. Now all terms in this expression, they are non-zero, remember. Now if m is equal to 1, suppose m is equal to 1, then what you are going to have? For all u in K, alpha 1 sigma 1 u equal to 0. Okay, because you are working in a field and sigma 1 is automorphism. It means alpha 1 sigma 1 u equal to 0. It means either alpha 1 equal to 0 or sigma 1 u equal to 0. But alpha 1 is non-zero. Therefore, sigma 1 equal to 0, sigma 1 of u equal to 0. For all u in K, that is sigma 1 becomes equal to 0, which is not possible. Okay, because sigma 1 is given to be non-zero. So, and if the product of these two is going to be 0, it means the only possibility remains that alpha 1 should be 0, which is a contradiction. So we have seen the result to be true for m is equal to 1. Okay, now suppose the result is true for m is greater than 1, and we'll show that the result is true for all m. Now what you are given, that sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma n, they are all distinct. It means I can always find an element v in K such that, say, sigma 1 b is different from sigma mv. Now remember, V belongs to K and U belongs to K. Therefore, their product closure property, VU also belongs to K. And so, because the expression 2 is going to be true for all U in K, in particular, it is going to be true for UV also. So, what you have got from 2, alpha 1 sigma 1 VU plus alpha 2 sigma 2 VU plus equal to 0. And because sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma m, they are automorphism. So I have applied the property of homomorphism. So this is nothing but alpha 1 sigma 1 V sigma 1 U plus alpha 2 sigma 2 V sigma 2 U plus and so on. This is equal to 0. Now if we just try to see, tries to compare the expression 2 and 4. Then mostly one of the factors is going to be same. The factor 4 differs from 2 by multiples of sigma 1v, sigma 2v, sigma 3v, and sigma mv. So what I am going to do, I am going to multiply expression 2 by sigma 1v and shall subtract from 4. So multiply relation 2 by sigma 1v and then subtract from 4, we get this expression. This alpha 1 portion will cancel out and you will be left with only alpha 2 times sigma 1v minus sigma 2v into sigma 2u plus sigma 3 into sigma 1v minus sigma 3v, sigma 3u plus and so on. Now just see, sigma 1 is different from all sigma 2v, sigma 3v, sigma 4v. So sigma 1v minus sigma 2v is non-zero. Sigma 1v minus sigma 3v is also non-zero. And sigma 1v minus sigma mv, this is also non-zero. Further, alpha 2, alpha 3, alpha 4, alpha m, they are also non-zero. It means alpha 2 times sigma 1v minus sigma 2v, this is non-zero. Alpha 3 times sigma 1v minus sigma 3v, this is also non-zero. That is the coefficients of sigma 2u, sigma 3v, sigma 3u, and up to sigma mu. They are all going to be non-zero. So let me just substitute them to be equal to bi. That is, I define beta I to be alpha I times sigma 1v minus sigma iv. Then beta I is non-zero. And the moment so if I just substitute the values of beta I here in this expression 5, I get beta 2 sigma uu, sigma 2u plus beta 3 sigma 3u plus beta m sigma mu equal to 0. Now, if you just try to compare this expression with expression 2, this expression 6 contains one term less than expression 2. And because expression 2 was the minimal expression, that is, you cannot further shorten it. So it gives you a contradiction. So this contradiction shows that our assumption that there exists alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n, not all of which are 0, is wrong. And hence, you cannot find alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n, not all of which are 0, such that their linear expression is going to be 0 for all u. So this proves the theorem. And having seen this result, now we are in a position to proceed further. We are going to define now only one part, because we have considered group of automorphisms. Only one part we are going to consider subgroups of this group. And on the other hand, if K is the field over which these automorphisms are being considered, then we are going to have subfields. So we will see how they are related in our And this is the crux of actually Galois theory. So first we make a definition. Let G denote the group of automorphisms of the field K. Then the fixed field of G in K. Now we are using this phrase fixed field. It is the set of all elements of K which remains invariant. That is, which are not changed under all elements of G. That is all alpha in K, such that sigma of alpha is equal to alpha for all sigma in G. Okay, so this is how we define a fixed field. You just see it is a subset of K because we are picking elements from alpha from K, such that sigma of alpha is equal to alpha for every sigma in G. On the other hand, so let me first dispose of this. Now the problem is, what is the connection of this fixed field? Of course, I already gave the name fixed field. If this fixed field is going to be a subfield of K. Okay, this fixed field is going to be subfield of K. So let me denote this subfield by the symbol Kg. Kg denote the fixed field of G in K. That is, it is the set of all elements of K which remain invariant under each element of G. So we will show that it is a subfield. So suppose alpha, beta are any two elements of Kg. It means sigma of alpha is equal to alpha and sigma of beta is equal to beta for every sigma in G. So therefore, sigma of alpha plus minus beta, because sigma is automorphism, so it is nothing but sigma alpha plus minus sigma beta. That is the same as alpha plus minus beta. That is, alpha plus minus beta belongs to Kg. And sigma of alpha beta, again apply the definition of homomorphism, sigma alpha times sigma beta, which is again alpha beta. So alpha beta also belongs to the fixed field Kg. And this shows that Kg is a subfield of K. And further, if alpha, because every non-zero element should possess inverse also. So if alpha is different from 0, then and alpha belongs to K, then K is a field, so alpha inverse exists. And then sigma of alpha inverse is nothing but inverse of sigma alpha, because sigma is a property of homomorphism. And this is nothing but alpha inverse, implying that alpha inverse is also in Kg. Therefore, this fixed field is always a subfield of K. So if we are given a group of automorphisms and consider we have got a subcollection of K, then we have seen how to define this fixed field. Now let me come to other part. Suppose K is an extension of F, then the collection of all automorphisms of K are related to F. That is, I am looking at automorphism of K only. Okay, related to M, because F is a subfield of K. I denote this by GKF, and it is defined to be collection of all automorphisms and which keep every element of F invariant. That is, under which all elements of F remains fixed. So we denote this by GKF. Maybe some more elements of K are also there, but it leaves every element of F fixed. Then, because it is a subcollection of group of automorphisms, so let us see the nature of this GKF. And we claim that GKF is a subgroup of G. So we have to prove this subgroup property of. So suppose sigma and rho are two elements of GKF. That is, they are nothing but automorphism in K. So we will show that sigma inverse and sigma rho, they are all elements of GKF. Now, first of all, sigma, because sigma is 1, 1 on 2, so sigma inverse is exists, and this is also 1, 1 on 2, and it is also automorphic. So sigma inverse is automorphic, and product of two automorphism, composition rather, not product, composition of two is also automorphism. So sigma rho is also automorphism. So now let us proceed. So suppose alpha belongs to F. Then by definition of GKF, sigma alpha is equal to alpha, rho alpha is equal to alpha, sigma inverse alpha is equal to alpha, and sigma rho of alpha, which is nothing sigma of rho of alpha, that is sigma of alpha, which is alpha. This shows that sigma inverse, sigma rho, they are all elements of GKF. And so GKF turns out to be a subgroup of B. So we have got mixed field, we have got subgroup, that is we have got subfields of K containing F, and we have got subgroups. Now, my first problem is, if K is a finite extension of F, then what is the relationship between degree of K over F and order of G of KF? Whether GKF is also going to be finite or not? And the answer is very plausible, and it was proved by Artin. This is also known as Artin's theorem. Okay, and this states that if K is a finite extension of F, then GKF is a finite group and its order satisfies, that is order of G of K of F is always going to be less than or equal to degree of K over F. So proof is simple rather, but let us see. Now you are given that K is a finite extension of F, that is K is a finite dimension vector space over F. Suppose degree of K over F is n. Okay, and suppose B is equal to U1, U2, Un, a basis of K over F. It consists of n elements. Now let me consider n plus 1 distinct automorphism, say denoted by phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, phi n plus 1. Now with the help of these automorphisms and these basic elements U1, U2, Un, let me consider system of equation in n plus 1 variables unknowns consisting of n equations. How it is? Phi 1 U1 into x1 plus phi 2 U1 into x2. That is, first equation is with respect to U1 only, first basic element. Phi 1 U1 x1, phi 2 U1 x2, n plus 1. Then likewise phi 1 U2 x1, phi 2 U2 x2, and so on. And lastly, phi 1 UN x1 plus phi 2 UN x2 up to phi of n plus 1 UN xn plus 1. Now, if you look up this system of equations, now this is, these are n equations in n plus 1 variables, unknowns. So it always has a non-trivial solution by our ordinary matrix algebra. So we can always find a non-trivial solution. So let that solution be given by x1 is equal to alpha 1 up to xn plus 1 is equal to alpha of n plus 1. So I just substitute these values here. So what I get, alpha 1 phi 1 ui plus alpha 2 phi 2 ui up to alpha n plus 1 phi of n plus 1 ui equal to 0 for I is equal to 1, 2, and for every ui. You have got this. Since every element in F is left fixed by F phi I, and since an arbitrary element T in K is nothing but a linear combination of U1, U2, UN because they are the basic elements. So T can be written as beta 1 U1 plus beta 2 U2 plus beta n UN with beta 1, beta 2, beta n in F. So applying automorphism phi 1, phi 2, phi 3 over these. So what you get actually, you will get alpha 1 phi 1 t plus alpha 2 phi 2 t plus alpha n plus 1 phi n plus 1 t, and this is going to be true for all t in K. Okay, and remember alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n plus 1, they are not all 0. So it contradicts our lemma. That is what we had said, that if phi 1, phi 2, phi n are n distinct automorphism, that is, it is not possible to find scalars alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n such that alpha 1, phi 1 plus alpha 2, phi 2 of u equal to 0 for all u in K. So this just contradicts that lemma, and hence it means what we have said, that phi 1, phi 2, phi n plus 1, they are the distinct elements of GKF. It is not possible. Therefore, it can contain at most n elements, and hence order GKF is nothing but less than equal to n, which is degree of K over F. So this proves Artin's theorem. And now actually depending upon our observation and depending upon our need, we are going to have different type of extensions of F. We had algebraic extension, we had separable extension, we will have perfect extension. Now this is another concept, that is normal extension. Actually, Galois' biggest contribution in algebra is the introduction of normal subgroups. Normality type of conditions, it is due to Galois only. So our another extension, that is normal extension. So it simply says it is always with respect to polynomial. Let F be any field and let Fx be a polynomial over F. Then we have seen that if Fx is irreducible over F, then there always exists an extension F containing all the roots of Fx. So in this section, or here we are going to consider those extension of F which contains all the roots of Fx. All the roots of Fx, and then we shall study their properties. So first of all, we define that an extension K will be called a normal extension of F if, number one, K is a finite extension of F. Okay. Number two, the fixed field of GKF is F itself. That is, it cannot contain any element from K. If these two conditions are satisfied, then this K will be termed as a normal extension of F. Now, if you just look up different books, so many times, because we know every finite extension is algebraic extension, that we have already proved. So many authors just replace this finite extension by algebraic extension. That is more general part. But as far as Herstein is concerned, he considers only finite extensions. So K is a finite extension of F, and fixed field of GKF is nothing but F itself. Then in that case, K is said to be a normal extension of F. And after this, we have got our major theorem. Now, just Artin theorem said that if K is a finite extension of F and you just look up KGA, degree of K over F, and group of automorphisms of G over F, GKF, then order of GKF is always less than or equal to degree of K over F. But if K happens to be normal extension, then we get equality. We just get equality. And that is given by this theorem. That is, let K be a normal extension of a field F, and let H be a subgroup of GKF. Then with respect to H, I can talk of KH. That is, it is the set of all elements of K which remain invariant under each element of H. I denote that by KH. I have just defined here also. Let KH be equal to all X in K such that sigma of X is equal to X for all sigma in H. That is, this is the fixed field of H. So with respect to this subgroup H of GKF, we have got a field KH. And what is the relation? If K happens to be a normal extension of F, then degree of K over KH is nothing but order of H. And this H is nothing. Now, once you have got this KH, I can talk of G of K, KH. That is, it is the group of all automorphisms of K under which each element of KH remains invariant. Okay, and we will show that this G of KKH is nothing but H itself. Okay, so we have got two things. GKF is big group. And if I consider any subgroup H, then with respect to this H, I have considered a subfield. A field KH, which is a subfield of K. And then under the condition of normality, extension of F, we have got this result. So let us prove this result. Again, somewhere it is going to be a part of Galois theorem. Okay. Now, since every element in H leaves elements of KH fixed, so therefore H is certainly contained in group of KH. But we know that by Artin's theorem, degree of K over KH is always greater than or equal to order of G, K or KH. And since H is a subgroup of GKH, therefore order of G, K, KH is greater than or equal to order H. We have the inequalities degree of K over KH greater than or equal to order of G, K, KH, and this is greater than or equal to order H. So if we are somehow able to show, or if we could show that degree of K over KH is nothing but order H, it would immediately follow that H is nothing but G of KKH. And as a subgroup, because their order are same and they are finite, therefore you will have this equality. So in order to prove everything, we merely show that degree of K over KH is nothing but order of H. Okay. Now there exists an element alpha in K such that K is equal to KH alpha. Why? Because K is a normal extension of F. So it's a finite extension and every finite extension is nothing but a simple extension. So there exists an element alpha in K such that this K can be realized as KH of alpha. So this alpha must therefore satisfy an irreducible polynomial over KH, say of degree m. Let us assume that degree of K over KH be m and no non-trivial polynomial of lower degree m. Let the elements of H be equal to, say, sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma H. Remember, because H is a group, one of the elements has to be an identity. So let us assume that sigma 1 is the identity element of GK. And where order of H is I have assumed to be equal to H. Now consider the elementary functions. Now this is an important concept, elementary function. Those who have already studied theory of equations, they must have come across expressions of the form x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus xn. x1, x2 plus x1, x3 plus x1, x4, xn plus x2, x3 plus xn, etc. So such type of expressions, they are known as elementary symmetric functions. So with respect to sigma 1 alpha, sigma 2 alpha, sigma h alpha, we are going to consider elementary symmetric functions. That is sigma 1 alpha plus sigma 2 alpha plus sigma 3 alpha, sigma h alpha. Let me denote this by A1. Sigma I alpha times sigma alpha j, that is 2 at a time, where I is less than j. Then 3 sigma I alpha, sigma j alpha, sigma k alpha, where I is less than j less than k, and I j k is equal to 1 to h. So these A1, A2, AH, they are all elementary symmetric function. And the beauty of these elementary symmetric function is that they all remain invariant under every automorphism. So each AI is invariant under every sigma in S. Therefore, by definition, all these elements, because they are all elements of K, so they are in elements in KH. Okay. Now, there is a connection between the coefficients of a polynomial and elementary symmetric function. That is, if x raised to the power n plus alpha 1, x raised to the power n minus 1 plus alpha 2, x raised to the power n minus 2 up to alpha naught. If this is a polynomial equation, and if suppose lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda n are the roots, then sum of the roots is nothing but negative of the coefficient of x raised to the power n minus 1, product of the roots, etc., etc. I think all of you are familiar with this type of relation. Even you must have used this in solving quadratic equations. So now, because these are all elementary symmetric functions, so with the help of this, I can just form this equation: x raised to the power h minus alpha a1, x raised to the power h minus 1 plus a2, x raised to the power h minus 2 plus n. They are all elements where these are all elements of KH. However, alpha as well as sigma 2 alpha, sigma h alpha is a root of this equation, because this can be written in this particular fashion. So by the very nature of alpha, we have h is greater than or equal to m. That is the degree of k over kh. Hence, order of h is greater than or equal to degree of k over kh. And we have already seen that order of h is less than or equal to degree of k over kh. So we arrive at the desired conclusion. So in case of normal extensions, we are going to prove some more results related to normal extension, because this is the backbone of Galois theory. So we have got many good results. One such result is that we have already seen. So some more results I will take up in my next lecture. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. नमस्कार सर.
Namaskar, namaskar.
Namaste, sir.
Again, I am asking each of you that if you find any difficulty while studying the book, please don't feel hesitate. Ask me. I have already given my telephone number, and you can send me even WhatsApp also over that number.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.